In the heart of West Africa, in a country often ignored by the global spotlight, a young man rose from the ranks of the military to challenge forces far greater than himself. His name is Ibrahim Traoré, the youngest leader in the world today, and perhaps one of the boldest voices Africa has produced in recent years. What sets him apart is not just his age, not just his military background, but the courage to stand firm against one of the most powerful forces in modern history, France. Burkina Faso, once a French colony, has long been tied down by strings of foreign control. From its resources to its politics, the shadow of France loomed large, dictating the pace of the nation's progress and exploiting its wealth. For decades, the people of Burkina Faso, much like many other African nations, lived under a system designed to keep them dependent, impoverished, and vulnerable. But then came a young captain who looked at this cycle and decided it had gone on long enough. That man was Ibrahim Traoré. When he stepped forward, the odds were stacked against him. France is not just another country. It is a global power, with economic might, political influence, and military reach. Standing against France has historically meant isolation, sanctions, and even war. Leaders who dared to resist often found themselves overthrown, disgraced, or assassinated. Yet Traoré, with nothing but the will of his people behind him, stood up and declared, "Burkina Faso will be free." This was not just a declaration of independence in words. It was a battle cry against decades of exploitation. France had controlled the resources of Burkina Faso, particularly its gold, while the people remained some of the poorest in the world. At the same time, insecurity grew as terrorist groups roamed freely across the Sahel region, killing villagers, displacing families, and creating fear. The French military, despite its presence in the region for years, failed to stop this chaos. Instead, suspicion grew that instability was being allowed to spread, because a nation that is always in crisis is a nation that cannot rise. It was within this environment that Traoré, just 34 years old, led a coup in 2022 to take charge of Burkina Faso. But unlike many before him, his coup was not for personal wealth or power. It was not to become a puppet of Western forces. His first message was clear: Burkina Faso will no longer be under France. This statement electrified Africa. For many, it was unthinkable. How could such a small country dare to defy such a mighty empire? But Traoré's defiance was not rooted in arrogance. It was rooted in truth. He saw how his people suffered. He saw how children could not drink clean water while gold and resources left the country daily. He saw how villages were burned by terrorists, while those who promised protection did nothing. And he realized that true independence, political, economic, and cultural, was the only path forward. Traoré quickly made bold moves. He ordered French troops to leave Burkina Faso. He expelled Western NGOs and foreign organizations that were suspected of meddling in internal affairs. He turned instead to new partners, nations like Russia, who promised cooperation without colonial strings attached. He announced that Burkina Faso's resources would no longer be stolen, but instead invested back into the people. These were radical steps that risked the wrath of powerful enemies. Yet he did not blink. What makes Traoré's defiance so remarkable is not just the decisions themselves, but the spirit behind them. He represents a new generation of African leadership, young, fearless, unapologetically African. He is not blinded by the promises of foreign aid, nor intimidated by threats from Paris. Instead, he is fueled by the dream that Burkina Faso can stand on its own feet, that Africa can rise without asking for permission. But with such defiance comes danger. History is full of African leaders who dared to resist France and the West, only to face deadly consequences. Thomas Sankara, the legendary revolutionary of Burkina Faso in the 1980s, stood against colonialism, only to be assassinated in a coup. Patrice Lumumba of Congo, who resisted Western exploitation, was brutally murdered. Muammar Gaddafi of Libya, who dreamed of a united Africa, was destroyed by NATO bombs. Every generation, Africa produces leaders who resist, And every generation those leaders face the full force of global powers determined to maintain control. Traoré knows this. He is not naive. He has openly spoken about how standing against France and its allies comes with risks. But he also knows that fear is the weapon of the oppressor, and courage is the weapon of the free. He has chosen courage. The young captain has also become a symbol of hope beyond Burkina Faso. Across Africa, young people see him as a hero, someone who dares to do what so many leaders failed to attempt. In Mali, Niger, Guinea, and other countries, facing the same struggles, his example has sparked a wave of anti-colonial sentiment. This is not just about one country. It is about an entire continent saying, enough. And yet, Traoré is not blinded by hate. He has not called for chaos or revenge. His message is simple. Africa must own Africa. Burkina Faso must own its destiny. He understands that true independence means building schools, hospitals, roads, and industries, not just expelling foreign armies. He knows that the work ahead is not easy. Standing up is the first step. Building a strong and free nation is the real battle. Already, his government has launched projects to provide clean water through wells, solar energy for villages, and protection for farmers. These are not just political moves. They are acts of survival for a people long denied the basics of life. And every step forward is a direct challenge to the colonial system that profited from keeping Burkina Faso weak. The world watches with mixed reactions. France sees him as a threat to its interests. Western media often paints him as a dangerous populist, a radical who will destabilize the region. But to his people, and to many across Africa, he is the face of freedom. He is the leader who dared to say no. It is important to remember that Traoré is still young, still learning, still shaping his leadership. The road ahead will test him, with political pressures, economic challenges, and threats from enemies both outside and within. Yet what cannot be denied is this. He has already changed history. By standing against France, by refusing to bow, he has proven that Africa does not have to accept exploitation as its destiny. France's power could not break him. Sanctions could not silence him. Fear could not control him. He has become a reminder that true strength is not in weapons or wealth, but in the courage to stand for one's people. In a world where so many leaders are puppets, Ibrahim Traoré is a lion. And whether his journey ends in triumph or tragedy, his roar has already shaken the walls of colonial power. Burkina Faso may be small, but through Traoré it has reminded the world of a timeless truth. No empire is invincible when the spirit of freedom burns in the hearts of the people. The story of Ibrahim Traoré is still being written. But one thing is certain. History will remember him as the young captain who stood tall when others bowed low. And for that, he has already won.